When I started this channel um, 7 years ago, I started by trying to make it coherent, and to that end, I would sort of write my scripts, and in order that they sort of hang together, um, and I could deliver something, um, something like a understandable message, and I thought um, if I could do that, then that my message was spread, and I could bring other people to my opinions, um, and it worked for a while, you know, um, and as you know, I've continued to do that for so long, um, but in the last few months, things have been happening so quickly that I don't have time for doing that. I have to ramble like this now, and for this, the strange thing is that for my entire 56 years, I've lived in a largely stable, largely peaceful, and largely prosperous country. And now, over the course of a weekend, I now live in a country experiencing internecine, sectarian civil war. And that's quite sobering. That's happened so quickly. And it really is quite something. And it's bewildering. I mean, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that about it being civil war. I mean, this is what it looks like. I mean, this is similar to lots of examples in history of communist takeovers. The Nazi takeover in Germany, a minority have taken over, and in this instance, it's not exactly a Muslim minority takeover, but it's their Confederates. The ridiculously hard and stupid left, who have managed to destroy everything in a generation. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who I'd spoke to for a while, and he's very much on the left. Not stupid left either, but he tends he leans left, and he was saying that he was somewhere, and the football was on, and England were doing well in the football, and everybody in the place that was 80% non-white were all cheering for England, and he was saying that that's why the kind of middle classes believe that that there's nothing wrong with all the immigrants. There's nothing wrong with all these people coming here, and And if you experience something like that, you probably would conclude that. I mean, I saw a video of something recently, and it was, I don't know, some pub or working men's club or something, and the um, and I guess it must have been in a predominantly Asian area, and India and Pakistan were playing cricket, and the sort of ancient rivalries that come up from there. And then there was, then next door, the football was on. England were playing football and doing quite well, and so apparently all the Indians and the Pakistanis came in to watch England, and were um, and were then cheering for England. And and I commented on the video, and I remember thinking that this is what we could have had. We could have had that. We could have had people from all over the world to come here and assimilate to a large degree, not completely, but to a greater degree, that they would do that. But the troublemakers have not allowed that. The troublemakers particularly on the Muslim side, and also the pathetic traitors in the white middle and upper classes, with all their promotion of all the race vultures, have just fucked everything up. They fucked everything up, and so we don't have that. We don't have Indians and Pakistanis cheering for the England team. We don't have that because the English are racist and colonialist and all the other shit they talk about from hundreds of years ago. And there is a temptation, an understandable temptation to think that we could never accommodate Muslims, and that's playing out now. And like I say, it's understandable that people think that, but I don't think that necessarily had to be the case, because I think the great majority of Muslims are just ordinary people who just go along to get along. Now, when times are normal and peaceful, then that's okay. People going along to get along. Um, but as we saw in COVID, those people are dangerous in themselves. And so those people, those what we might call moderate Muslims, once the Muslims get into power, will just align themselves with the Muslims in power just to get along. And they'll probably know that it's unfair as well. They'll know that it's unfair to the British, but they'll just go along to get along, in the same way that people who always previously thought that forcing a medical intervention on people was wrong and against so many principles, just abandon that for an easy life. I mean, we've all said that things were going to have to get worse before they got better, and we are now in the getting worse stage. And I'm not sure that it's recoverable. The fact that the politicians and the media have very definitely come down against us, against the native population, and have demonised us. I mean, the stuff I see online, gangs of masked Muslims standing outside mosques with, a huge cache of weapons. and the police politely ask them to put their their weapons down. And you compare that to the newspaper headlines, and it's all about far right thugs. They just will not report this stuff. And the fact that they were these these gangs of Muslims were ready and prepared at a moment's notice to gather and accumulate weapons, sort of immediately, suggests to me that they knew this was coming as well. I mean, part of this is that they still know, whatever their, you know, whatever their advances at the moment, they do know that they are a minority. But at the moment, they're not really a minority because the only people opposing them is a minority of the white working class. So in that case, in that instance, they aren't actually a minority. And we've had so many red lines crossed. I mean, the grooming gangs should have woken people up. The grooming gangs should have woken people up to the cancer that's going on. And yet they double down. And they say that it isn't. They say that it is happening. You know, one of my best friends was just he was tying himself in knots to tell me it wasn't about race and it wasn't about Muslims. And he's got teenage daughters. The inability of people to see what's going on in front of their eyes never ceases to amaze me. Somebody recently online said, talking about the general lawlessness in the United States, was saying, can anybody tell me why we actually have laws? Because they're broken with impunity and there's no comeback at all. And it made me think, why do people have eyes? The demonised figure of Tommy Robbins will continue to get the blame for much of this. No matter how many, no matter how many people of other colours and creeds and faiths he gets on his side, and there are a lot. No matter how many of those people, they'll just continue to call him a racist. And this is what they're doing to the people who are fighting back now. What do these people think that we should do? I mean, judging by what Keir Starmer was saying the other day and yesterday, I think it was as soon as yesterday, it it appears that what they seem to be thinking is that if they can just bring down the temperature, and even he's not doing that, he's just pouring fuel on the fire. But he's obviously taken the side, and that side is not ours. Um, do they think that if they just keep a lid on it, that this stuff will go away? But the same situations, the same conditions will still exist in a week or a month from now as happen now, as are in existence now. And he seems to think that threatening people with what seems to be almost summary justice, according to their definition, is going to make people just stop fighting back. What do they think is going to happen? Just oh well, the government have got a bit upset with us now, so we better pipe down. Do they think that's going to happen? It is just astonishing what they think they've been doing. I mean, we can all say, oh, it's the WEF, it's their paymasters. I suppose that's possible, I suppose they are. I suppose it is possible. It's just a cabal of people elected into the government who are just these dastardly villains who want to see this country destroyed. I mean, it's understandable to think that because every single thing they're doing is hastening that along. But is all of government just populated by people like that? And what surprises me is, there is an open goal here for some politicians to be considered heroes. This is so difficult to understand. Even if you do believe the Kalergi plan and the replacement migration UN plan, just because the UN's got a plan for that, that doesn't mean that all of our politicians have to agree to it. I mean, what is in it? What is in it for them? I mean, David Amos was murdered by a mad Islamist. He was an MP. most MPs don't walk around with massive security details like they're the president of the United States. They're just MPs. I mean, I suppose senior government ministers have some sort of security detail, and wankers like Sadiq Khan have that. But do they really want to? Do they really want to live in a place where there's a possibility that someone's going to kill them at any moment? Do they want that? This is just so strange. We had a perfectly functioning society. Well, it wasn't perfect, but you know what I mean. It was functioning. It had its problems, as all societies have their problems. But it was basically a functioning society. And we're going to go the way of Lebanon. I mean, what is there? 6 million Muslims in the country, perhaps more, but it's certainly less than 10%. And so half of them are men. It's 3 million, and maybe 2 million of them are of kind of fighting age. So that's 2 million men on their side. We can muster 2 million men on our side, but can we do it? And many more, but can we do it quickly enough? There are certain things that are just so difficult to understand, and one of them is this insistence on the very worst motives that they apply to people who complain about mass immigration. You're racist. You're racist. You say you're racist, and it means they don't have to think any more about anything. Then you're the devil. Being racist is the worst crime in the world, according to them. And so you get to a stage where, and this is what's so depressing about this whole thing, is that you get to the stage where a lot of people will just conclude that the racists are right. And that will be difficult to argue against. But this insistence of people who attribute racism to anybody, as if it's like the default position of everybody, that any subject, any conflict, any disagreement, the default position is that they will resort to racism. That's the first thing they'll resort to. It's a sort of nativist impulse to hate the other. and how they throw around the accusations of Nazism as, oh, you're a Nazi, and as if being a Nazi is such an attractive thing to be that people are just one step away from it at all times. That Nazism is so attractive that that's what people um, that's what that's what people want to be thought of as. I don't know if this can be recovered. You know, at least not in the short term. I think we've got some shit to go through, and the reason why the Muslims, you know, resorted to um, amassing weapons and congregating immediately is that they knew this was coming too. And this will be the first time that they will, this will be the first time that they will have ever felt under siege. And, you know, there'll be a lot of bluster. And they know that they've got the state on their side, so they don't have to be as careful as the native population. And as they are still a minority, they can always leverage that as their excuse. Well, we're under attack. You know, they're attacking us. They're coming for the mosques. Um, and so they will win the first few scuffles. They are more organised. They are more united, and they know that they've got the apparatus of the state on their side. They know that Keir Starmer and the Labour government, along with the entire civil service, the media, and everybody else, are on their side. So they're going to win the first few battles. But one of the things that I think is interesting here is that one of the things that I found quite surprising, really, is that they are still a minority, and they were on course to becoming a majority in not very long at all. You know, one more generation. And you'd think that being on course for that, you'd think that they would behave themselves, wouldn't you? You think they'd behave themselves until they were in a position just to leverage our democracy against us and just take over, like they did in Lebanon. But it seems like they can't help themselves. You know, they could have taken over democratically if they just bided their time, but they didn't. And it makes me wonder why they were so stupid about that. And I think it's bluster, and I think quite a lot of them are not really very intelligent. It's all that cousin marriage. I wish I could say something a bit more inspiring. Like I say, the events are just taking place so quickly that I can't keep up. I've still got a living to earn. This is the kind of incoherent rant avoid. I've tried to avoid by writing scripts for these videos, but this is what you've got. This is what you're going to get, and you know, I find it incredible that these people who are allowing this, what kind of place do they think they're going to live in? It's like if you promote lawlessness, and you promote it, and the vile business people who are profiting off this, like Serco, for instance, they're making money hand over fist because of all these migrants being put up in hotels all around the country. I understand the profit motive. I understand that. And there's nothing wrong with trying to make a profit in some instances. But when your profit involves destroying your own society, I mean, where's the benefit of that? Because if you're in business to make money, the idea is that you make money so that you can enjoy the fruits of the society that you live in. But if your policies to make money just make your society so dangerous that it cannot be pleasant to live in, well, what's the point? What's the point of having a brand new Bentley that as soon as you stop at the traffic lights, you'll get carjacked? What's the point of that? And clever people always going on about, oh well, they're trying to transfer all our assets to them, so they become enriched and we become impoverished. And yeah, I'm sure that is the case. I'm sure they are doing that. But in the end, what's the point? So they can live in a fortress with the great unwashed climbing the walls outside. I mean, like everybody else, like a lot of other people, this whole situation is I'm dismayed by it. But at the same time, I think it's something we were always going to have to go through. I mean, I think we've been living in a phony war for some time, with the government and media and the institutions not acknowledging that there's a problem, pretending that there isn't one. And of course, there's an awful lot of people as well online who are saying, oh, don't get involved in all this. You're falling into their trap because it's all being orchestrated to usher in the digital ID and 15-minute cities, and yes, we know all that, but what's the alternative? You know, do we just lay down for another 5 years? Not getting upset, not fighting back, just so that we get another 5 years without living in a 15-minute city. They're trying to implement the 15-minute city anyway, whether you know whether we fight back or not. That's what they're trying to do anyway. It's like people who said, don't go to the cenotaph on Remembrance Day because to do so would be to fall into their trap. Well, if we didn't go, they would have all taken a shit on the cenotaph. And of course, along with the um, the obvious victims of this being the native population, the other people that are going to get forgotten about this is all the normal civilized immigrants and sons and daughters of immigrants who have come here and have played the game and have supported the place and, and obeyed the law and paid taxes and contributed in all the myriad ways that they will have done. Um, they're going to get caught up in this, and nobody's going to be interested in the fact that they've supported this country and that they've played by the rules. Nobody's really interested because they're just going to look different, and people aren't going to be able to. People are going to think, well, you look different, and now we can't trust you. And sometimes that'll be true, and most of the time it won't be. One of the things that I think is true is that the state's bluster is just bluster. The state is losing control. There's 130,000 police in the country, and then people say things like, "Well, maybe they're going to bring the army in." The army are pathetic. There's fuck all left of them. 80,000. There's 80,000 people in the army. That's not much more than half the police force. I mean, I know they're heavily armed. Sure, they're heavily armed, but you know, they can't do anything. What can 80,000 heavily armed soldiers do against 5 or 6 million people? Nothing. The state has become, for all its authoritarian tendencies, the state is become has become an irrelevance, really. I mean, it was pretty sinister. It was pretty fucking sinister how the Labour government came in and released 40,000 people out of the prisons. Yeah, why did they do that? Yeah, because now they got 40,000 prison places. I know if I speak to someone normally friends about this, they'll just think, "Oh, it'll blow over. It'll blow over. We're not in civil war. You know, oh, it's not as bad as that. You know, it's not a banana republic. You know, it's not the end of our civilization." They'll just keep on saying that until the moment that it isn't. And they think we're going to go and fight in Ukraine. I think one of the strongest biases is normality bias. You go out into the street, the lights are still on. You know, you turn the tap on, the water still comes out, and so you think it's always going to be like that. But stable, peaceful, prosperous societies are a blip in history. They're a miracle, really, and they've really only existed for 100 years or so. The default position is one of chaos and tribalism, and the one who's got the biggest stick wins. That's humanity. You know, the UN Declaration of Human Rights is, you know, what was that? Written up by 100 people. That's not the reality of things, as much as we like to imagine it. Civilization is just thinnest of veneers. I mean, I suppose in a way it's a surprise that it's lasted so long, but it could have lasted. It could have lasted. One wonders what some of our favourite villains are thinking about what's happening. You know, what's George Soros thinking? What's Sadiq Khan thinking? You know, as I'm watching this, I'm, as I say, I'm watching this with dismay, disbelief, and horror. And what's that little cunt Khan thinking when he watches it? Yeah, He's probably salivating. I'm sorry if you're sitting there thinking, what's he going to say next? Why isn't he saying anything? Why did he do this video when he didn't have anything proper to say? And I probably should have done. Last week I still lived in a civilized country. This week I don't. This week we've joined, Lebanon, Iraq, Venezuela, Colombia, South Africa. I mean, this really, for some time now, probably for another generation, the United Kingdom will be a failed state. It will be one of those states that is, talked about with pity, supposedly at the United Nations. One of the most civilized countries in the world, reduced to this. And I suppose we will still send a man in a suit and tie to represent us at the United Nations and the G7. And pretend that we still are a functioning society that has something to say. Yeah, and we've got David Lammy as our foreign representative. I mean, things are never too late. There's never a time that is ever too late to try and correct things. But fuck me, we have left it very late. There's always an opportunity to pull things back, but we have left it far too long. And we've allowed traitors in our midst to betray us. The libtards, to coin a phrase. I mean, how many of these people were there? I mean, when I think about this, it surprises me that so many people did vote for Remain, all those years ago. You know, we won the vote, but it was a close run thing. Do I think all of those Remainers are traitors? No, I don't. No, I don't think they're all traitors. But there's a big there's a big percentage of them that are. Maybe we deserve this. Maybe we deserve this because we haven't wanted to get our hands dirty. And that's understandable. Most politicians are despicable. But if you don't, I think it was Aristotle said, if you don't get involved in politics, you accept being ruled by your inferiors. And we have done that. It's a common trope, isn't it, that you can vote your way into totalitarianism, but you have to shoot your way out. One of the things that astonishes me is the idea from so many of these treacherous types that the most noble of our principles, the most noble of ones throughout the West that make it admirable, they don't give a shit about them. All they're concerned about is making sure that people who don't think like them get a say. You know, that was the Brexit vote all over. You know, they didn't want van drivers to have a say because they went to university. You know, they're a profession. So they seem not to care about things like the rule of law and freedom of speech. I mean, that there's that guy, the secret barrister. He's on Twitter, and I didn't know much about him, but he calls himself the secret barrister because I think he anonymously talks about certain legal things that he can't say publicly, um, and in essence, that was probably quite a good thing. Um, but he's just revealed himself to be the very worst type of liberal tyrant. He's salivating at the idea that anybody on Twitter that might have been so-called encouraging the riots, which of course may include me, is just salivating at the idea that he can appeal to totalitarian authority to get us arrested. He said people are going to have to experience a lot of unpleasant knocks on the door, and the satisfaction in that, you know, our lot are in charge now, and if you disagree, you're going to get a knock on the door. You know, and the secret barrister presumably is a barrister. Presumably presumably he would have valued the idea of the rule of law, freedom of speech, and equality before the law, and due process, and all that sort of stuff. No, it's not a fucking bit of it. No, you're on the other side now, and we got all the power, and we're going to fuck you up, mate, and be happy about it. Yeah, people demonise the working class as being, moronic and knuckle dragging, and there's an element to that. Is there an element to working class in any country? But as time goes on, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that whilst the working class are not perfect and are not super intellectuals, they hold fast to principles far more, uh, um, far more aggressively than the so-called liberal professional class. And it's sort of, with the sort of non-intellectual, non-articulate working class, I suppose you can call them. They don't, like I say, they don't articulate this stuff, but they know that things are right and things are not right when things are not right. They know that we should be able to speak our minds. They know that the law should be applied equally. They don't often express it in such terms, because they're not those types of blokes. The so-called respectable class are absolutely fucking despicable. They're fucking despicable, and part of me wants them to get what's coming to them, because it will come. All this appeasing of these Islamists, all this appeasement will come back to bite them, and they think it won't. There will be a reckoning one day for them. Well, I suppose I've rambled enough now. But we do have to remember, when all is said and done, that we are the majority. Most of the majority are still fucking asleep. They're still asleep. But they will wake eventually. And eventually they will thank us for waking them. But until then, everybody try to stay free. Bless you all.